Picture this. It's the dead of winter, February 1959. We're high up in the remote Ural mountains of what was then the Soviet Union, and a really chilling mystery is just starting to unfold. This is one of those stories that starts out as an exciting adventure and ends with a scene so bizarre, so terrifying, that it just defies any simple explanation. And at the very heart of this mystery, there are 9 people, 9 students and graduates, all part of an expedition that was, tragically, going to be their last. And let's be clear, these weren't a bunch of amateurs. They were all skilled, they were physically fit, and they were totally prepared for the brutal conditions of a Siberian winter. And yet, weeks after they were supposed to come home, they were all found dead, scattered across this desolate, frozen mountainside. When rescuers finally found their camp, their tent was discovered sliced open from the inside. All their belongings, their warm clothing, their shoes, all of it was left behind. Something made these seasoned mountaineers flee their only shelter into minus 30-degree temperatures. The question that has haunted investigators and armchair detectives for over 60 years is just why? All right, so let's get into it. We really have to start right where the investigation did, with what that search party stumbled upon back on February 26, 1959, on the slopes of a mountain whose local name ominously translates to Mountain of Death. The scene they found was just completely baffling. Their tent was collapsed and buried in snow, but the real shocker was that it had been slashed open from within. All of their gear, their food, and this is the crazy part, their shoes and winter coats were still inside. And leading away from the tent were these footprints in the deep snow, footprints made by people who were either barefoot or just wearing socks. And yet there were absolutely no signs of a fight, no signs of anyone else being there at all. So to even begin to understand what could have possibly gone so wrong, we need to know who these people were and what they were even doing out there in the first place. Okay, so the group actually started with 10 members, but right at the beginning, one of them, Ural, had to turn back because he got sick. A simple twist of fate that ended up saving his life. The other 9, led by a guy named Igor Dyatlov, they pushed on. Their big goal was to reach a nearby peak. On the night of February 2nd, they set up what would be their very last camp on this exposed, windy slope. And when they didn't come back on schedule, a massive search effort got underway, which of course is what led to the grim discoveries. And this quote from Ural, the only one who made it out, it's just heartbreaking. It really captures the profound loss and the deep, nagging mystery of what happened to his friends after he said goodbye. We've seen the bizarre scene at the camp, but it's the evidence found on the hikers' bodies themselves that takes this mystery from strange to sheer horror. Okay, so the first 2 bodies were found under a large pine tree, dressed only in their underwear, next to the remnants of a tiny fire. 3 more, including the leader, Igor Dyatlov, were found in positions that suggested they were desperately trying to crawl back up the slope towards the tent. For these first 5, the cause of death was listed as hypothermia. Makes sense. But months later, the last 4 bodies were finally discovered buried deep in the snow in a ravine, and their injuries were absolutely shocking. They had suffered catastrophic internal trauma. We're talking crushed skulls, major chest fractures, but with no significant external wounds. And maybe most horrifically, one of the hikers, Lyudmila Dubinina, was found without her tongue and eyes. To put that into perspective, one of the medical examiners, Dr. Boris Vozrogendi, said the force required to cause those injuries was comparable to being hit by a car. Yet somehow their skin was barely broken. I mean, how is that even possible? And if that wasn't strange enough for you, another detail came out. Tests on the clothing of a few of the victims revealed pretty significant levels of radioactive contamination. The case was just getting stranger and stranger with every new piece of evidence. So, you have to ask, how do we explain all of this? The panicked escape, the weird undressing, those brutal internal injuries, the radiation. It's a lot. And over the years, countless theories have popped up, trying to connect all these bizarre dots. So one of the biggest theories points a finger directly at the Soviet military. The whole idea is that the hikers just stumbled into the wrong place at the wrong time, right into a secret weapons test. Maybe the concussive blast from something like a parachute mine, which explodes in midair, caused the internal injuries and sent them running for their lives. This theory, you gotta admit, seems to explain a lot. The powerful blast would account for those car crash-like injuries without any external wounds. It could explain the traces of radiation, And the fact that the whole case was quickly classified by officials definitely fuels that suspicion. Plus, there were even reports from other groups in the area of seeing bright flying spheres in the sky that night. But, on the flip side, there are no official records of any weapons tests happening. And the searchers found no crater, no shrapnel, no physical evidence of any explosion whatsoever. Okay, so let's put the conspiracies aside for a second and look at Mother Nature. Could this have been just a tragic but ultimately natural event? A regular old avalanche seems like the obvious culprit, right? It would totally explain why they'd panic and cut their way out of the tent. But investigators at the time noted the slope really wasn't steep enough for a typical avalanche, and the way their footprints led in an organized line downhill just didn't match the chaos of an avalanche escape. Well, what about an animal attack? That would certainly explain the terror. But there were 0 animal tracks found anywhere near the site, and the injuries just didn't match any known predator. So, for decades, the mystery was just locked in speculation. But then, in 2021, a team of Swiss scientists decided to take a crack at the problem, but this time using modern technology and a totally fresh perspective. Their research, which was published in a major scientific journal, didn't point to aliens or secret weapons. Instead, it pointed to a very specific and pretty rare type of avalanche, what's known as a delayed slab avalanche. So, here's how their model works. First, the hikers cut into the snow to shelter their tent from the wind, which is a smart move. But what they didn't realize is that they had unintentionally destabilized the block of snow right above them. Then, for hours, these powerful downslope winds kept piling more and more snow onto that weak spot. And finally, while they were all asleep, a solid slab of snow cracked and slid down, not burying the tent completely, but landing on it with tremendous, crushing force. This is what explains those brutal internal injuries. So now you're in the pitch black, you're confused, some of your friends are seriously hurt. You do the only thing you can. You slash your way out and flee to the forest, hoping to wait out what you think is an even bigger danger. You know, what makes this theory so compelling is that it elegantly explains the biggest contradictions in the case. It accounts for those car crash injuries without needing an explosion. It explains the long delay between them setting up camp and fleeing. It explains why they cut their way out and why searchers found so few signs of a typical avalanche. It provides a logical chain of events, all rooted in actual science. With a sophisticated scientific model like this, it really seems like we might finally have a rational explanation for one of history's most chilling mysteries. But is it really that simple? Is the case finally closed? Because even this excellent theory doesn't quite answer everything. Those horrific injuries to Ludmila Dubinina, they're often chalked up to natural decomposition in running water, but it's still a deeply disturbing detail. The source of the radiation is still up for debate. Was it from a military source? Or did one of the hikers just have a job that involved radioactive materials? What about those bright flying spheres that so many people reported seeing? And why did the original Soviet investigation close the case by concluding the hikers died from an unknown compelling force, a phrase that just seems designed to deepen the enigma? Look, science has given us the most plausible answer we've ever had, but with these questions still hanging there in the cold mountain air, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains a powerful and incredibly unsettling mystery. So after hearing all the evidence, I have to ask, what do you believe